I want to do a segment called Hypocrisy Now. Hypocrisy Now. And tonight, for most of the night, I've had to talk about so many examples of hypocrisy that comes from the left. And I've made a lot of political enemies over the last year and a half because I have a habit and quite frankly, a knack for quickly seeing hypocrisy. I call it bullshit, but let's be politically correct, right? Hypocrisy. And no one has been, there's so many examples, right? But this most recent incident with Hillary Clinton's health has been one of the best examples of the hypocrisy of the left. And I cannot, I'm sorry, I don't see how, no, I do, and I'll talk about it in a minute. But for me, I cannot hold someone to a standard that I'm not going to hold myself to. I cannot condemn somebody for something that I'm doing. And that's why we're going to do a regular segment called Hypocrisy Now. So Hillary Clinton's health has been called into question a lot over this election, partly because they're not forthcoming with information on her health, and they don't feel it's required for her to disclose these health statements. But it was so ironic in the course of this election, seeing political commentators, particularly the one you see on your screen now, Joan Walsh and Cillizza, who basically have been making the case this entire election that Hillary Clinton's health is not something that we should be discussing. Case in point, if you take a look at your screen, here's a quote from Joan Walsh, who says that she's the best spokesperson for white America, talking about Hillary Clinton's coughing attack and essentially reducing any coverage of her coughing attack to being a right-wing smear. Another example of Joan Walsh's ability to obfuscate the issue is this. Are we seriously talking about Hillary Clinton's health as a serious issue? Really? Well, it's funny, Joan, because the funny thing about it is that Twitter doesn't go away. Neither does your publications for Salon. And as many people have been pointing out, Joan Walsh has in the past been on the front tip of the spear covering the health questions of past presidential candidates, namely, here's a most recent headline, Friday, August 19th, asking about medical mudslinging. The right-wingers reach a new low with their smears about Hillary's health. Well, here's the thing. If we're going to ask about Hillary's health, if we're not going to ask about Hillary's health, then it makes sense that we shouldn't really ask about any of the president's health. But that would be too consistent for Joan Walsh. Here's Joan Walsh in 2008. What's in John McCain's medical records? He'll be releasing everything about his repeated cancer surgeries, but he won't release his psychiatric records, which hold clues to the effect of his Vietnam captivity. But she doesn't stop there. What's wrong with Mitt Romney? His disastrous British visit has to raise question about his capacity for diplomacy required to be president. And highlighted there, you'll see this is a statement from Joan Walsh in 2012. Maybe we should be asking to see his medical records and not just his tax returns. I don't mean to sound flippant about that or insensitive to any kind of problem he may be struggling with, but his struggles are our struggles. He is running to be our president. His struggles are our struggles. He is running to be president. Meanwhile, 4 years later, are we seriously talking about Hillary Clinton's health as a serious issue? Really? Hypocrisy now. And it gets worse. So Cillizza, whose name I have a difficult time saying because I always want to say Cillizza, but Cillizza writes for a blog called The Fix on the Washington Post. He too got a piece of the action. Just recently, he stated, can we just stop talking about Hillary Clinton's health now? And this was September 6th. This was just a few days ago, last week. Because, it's just something we shouldn't talk about. Let's lay it to rest. There's really, there's no reason we should be talking about Hillary Clinton's health at this point. But the funny thing about it is, in 2008, he wrote an article about how important it was for us to talk about John McCain's health. And no sooner than he published the article on September 6th saying, can we stop talking about Hillary's health now? He had to write this article, which was laughable. Why I wrote about John McCain's health in 2008. And I don't think we should write about Hillary Clinton's health now. You can't make this up. You cannot make this up. So in 2008, you wrote about John McCain's health. 2016, you don't think we should write about Hillary Clinton's health. Oh, but the news changes really quickly. You got to keep up, Chris. Hillary Clinton's health just became a real issue in the presidential campaign, published in the Washington Post on September 11th by Chris Cillizza. You know what I found in life? If you don't, how can I put this? If you just stay true to yourself, you don't have to become a contortionist to wiggle your way or weasel your way out of stuff you said before. If you don't lie, you don't have to keep up with your lies. If you don't play political games, you don't have to keep up with your political spin when you turn around and then do the counter spin against your opponent. But that's asking too much, because if you do that, if you hold yourself to the same standard that you demand other people be held to in politics, then you all of a sudden become useless to politicians who need you. I mean, earlier I said I don't understand how they do this, but I understand perfectly well how they do this. This is how politics works. This is how they work it. This is what they want. They want people who in one breath can say, don't ask us those kind of questions. How dare you ask us those kind of questions? And in the next breath say, we need to ask those same exact questions of our political opponent. They want people who see no problem, no contradiction. They have no qualm with being a political stooge, with being a political propagandist and forwarding questions and forwarding propositions against their opponent that they will cry foul if you ever did against their candidate of choice. This is what politicians look for. They're not looking for someone who's going to be honest and show integrity, not when it comes to this political game. They want people who are going to twist the truth. Because if you tie your hands to being ethical, and not even just ethical, if you tie your hands to refusing to do something that you have accused another person of doing, if you tie your hands to refusing to use a political opportunity that you lambasted your opponent for using before, if you tie your hands to even being true to yourself, then that paycheck is not for you, because they want and need people who are going to ask questions about Donald Trump's health, but never Hillary Clinton's health. And Donald Trump wants people who are going to ask questions about Hillary Clinton's speeches, but never ask questions about his taxes. That's the way politics works. But that's not the way our media should work. That's not the way our journalists should work. And I've got no problem with politicians doing that, because that's what politicians do. But when they have entire media outlets at their disposal, they are able to not only co-opt their campaign and their constituency, but they're able to co-opt journalists. So then it's not only their political hitmen who are out there doing this, who are asking questions that they would never ask their opponent, that they would never ask their own colleague. They would never ask their politician of choice a certain set of questions. But as soon as their rival gets on, as soon as they get an interview with their political rival, they become this type of journalistic hero of great integrity that's going to ask all of these robust questions that they would never ask their candidate of choice. And that's the ultimate problem I have. those two people that I showed you tonight who profiles in Hypocrisy Now, they are ostensibly journalists. They're not paid hitmen for the Clinton campaign, political hitmen for the Clinton campaign. They are ostensibly journalists writing for large media outlets, the Washington Post, The Nation. Joan Walsh used to be the editor-in-chief of Salon.com. If this is what our journalism has come to, if this is what our media has devolved into, if this is the standard by which we're going to hold ourselves accountable as journalists, then why even do journalism in the first place? Just go and be a political propagandist for the campaign and get a good check doing it. You know, well, I almost called out some names, but that's enough for tonight, folks. I'll catch you next time. Tomorrow night, we'll be back in the saddle covering some more news.